Oh yeah.
Don't talk about it.
Yeah,
I don't talk about it.
No spoilers. No spoilers.
I'm telling you, she's gonna end up on the pearl at the end.
I'm saving everything.
No.
Oh, I put it on
Did
my,
you start
my
from the
list.
beginning?
Oh, yeah.
I did too
Yeah.
on season 2.
I think
Okay,
we're
we're
gonna be at the end.
And then you just gotta keep power
end up
through
on
it.
that throne.
I haven't seen
Maybe say
Endgame
what-
yet, but
Oh my
He's
God.
amazing.
I watched it twice.
1.2 billion
I watched it
in its
twice.
I
opening
am
weekend.
gonna be in such a.
Oh, did you see Endgame too?
I haven't yet. We're planning to go this
Wonderful.
weekend.
So
1.2 billion dollars in its opening weekend.
It
Like,
might have been the most
Oh my
emotional
God.
weekend of my life.
yeah. Well, somebody
Did you see both of them?
somebody did point out that there was a meme that was going around that was something like, you know, be sure to keep the Starks in your thoughts this weekend. And I hadn't thought of that, but in Endgame you had Tony Stark, and in Game of Thrones you had the whole Stark family. So you had kind of Starks involved with these two mega things that were happening both in the same weekend. So, anyways, all right. So yeah, I'll leave this up here if you want to go to a web address or anything like that, or make use of it, and you have the floor.
Okay.
Once again, scoot out.
It's funny, you're in front of your kids all day and you think nothing of it, and as soon as you get in front of a group of your peers, you get like,
You coming up?
Someone blocked the screen now.
Oh.
I can
Yeah, you can use
There
my
you go.
can use my chair if you
Humana.
want.
Well, once we're,
Yeah, you're
that's like
thrown.
not till the middle anyway. So.
Yeah, that's
Where is the best place to get it through email?
I'll get that.
Okay. Okay. If you didn't get to play our game, it's called Cards to Save Humanity, which is a spin on Cards Against Humanity, if you're familiar with that game. So the problem that
Take
we
over your
had
session here.
was that students have a basic understanding of climate change, but possibly some misconceptions about climate change, and also more of a superficial understanding versus a deeper one. So the problem that we were trying to solve was to kind of deepen students' knowledge of the topic and apply higher level thinking skills to defend their card choice. So that will make more sense as we explain how the game is played if you're unfamiliar with Cards Against Humanity. The audience was a high school biology class of college prep learners, and our content was pulled from Connecticut NGSS standards that Kathleen found for us related to climate change. They were kind of slightly a stretch because they were very specific, but there's a relation there. And our objective, like I said, was basically for students to deepen and explain their reasoning behind why, how climate change is the far-reaching impacts of climate change. Sorry, that was really hard to get out.
Wednesday night.
I think that's pretty much it for the ID plan of the problem of where we started from. Next is how to play the game, or how we developed it.
Oh, how we developed it.
That's me. So, you know, I'll kind of say I think we had a fairly easy time with the development. You know, we had some initial ideas that, you know, we had all put out there. We discussed them through. We pretty quickly landed on this one, you know, both from the content as well as the kind of how it would fit that game model. So we really didn't end up going through a ton of iterations. We did spend a little time. At first, we were saying, you know, are we going to be able to get enough content into this style of a game? You know, do we need to look at other ways to address some content? You know, so we said, okay, well, if we start with a Cards Against Humanity style, which is a, you know, fill in the blank for anybody who's not, you know, so you have a kind of a question card with a blank in it, and then you look through your possible answers, choose the best one, and, you know, submit that as your answer. So, you know, are we going to be able to come up with enough content there? You know, we talked about, you know, maybe blending it with another game that was kind of based on, you know, it was a meme, and then you're supposed to, you know, give a funny caption for that picture. So you would, you know, maybe we'd have a picture of a forest fire, and someone would have to give, you know, a good climate change based answer for that. we kind of bounced it around, and I think it solidified when we got to the alpha testing. We saw that we had a stack of cards that we were working with, went through that testing, saw that it actually tested out pretty well, and we said, well, with the number of cards that we've built just by kind of throwing this together, I don't think we need to go further and try to find more content for the game, and it was going to add unnecessary complexity to the design of the game, and the flow chart was fairly nice and clean. We kind of stole it from the design of the game we were based on. I mean, we didn't need to make it any more complex than that. So
We
it,
didn't reinvent the wheel.
yeah, I mean, it really,
We didn't have to.
yeah, we landed on it pretty quickly. It came together pretty quickly, and I thought overall it went pretty well for us.
Mhm. Good. All right. So the how to play the game is basically you have this is our stack of white cards, right, which are basically like the answer choices that you have. And then we have a stack of black cards, which are very nicely black on the back out there. And that has, the question with a blank. Some of them have 2 blanks. Some of them most of them just have 1, I would say. And the idea is that you have to have an environmental protector. So we had the idea that it would be the teacher because the environmental protector is the judge of the answers, right? So somebody has to be the judge of what is going to be the best answer. And we had talked about trying to make one of the students, the environmental protector, but we realized very quickly that could become a problem because you don't want the student to say yes and then have some misconceptions that have become ingrained now because you're like, wait, no, that's not right. So the teacher really needs to be the environmental protector to be the final judge of the answers. I guess maybe if you had an AP class or something and you really trusted a student to do it, but yeah, that's up to the teacher. So then the teacher would divide up this class into groups with no more than 4 players per team. And so there is definitely that element of having to collaborate and having to work together. The environmental protector will deal out 8 of the cards, the white cards, to each group, basically. You could play it with individual players, so we put player or team. And then the black card is drawn by the environmental protector. They read it aloud to the entire class. And then the teams have just 1 minute to discuss and choose what they're going to answer, what final answer they're going to lay down. And there's write-in cards. So there's a blank white card with a dry erase marker that they can then write in an answer if none of their choices fit and they have the write-in card. They can include that as well and submit that to the environmental protector. And then the teacher, the environmental protector, will go ahead and review all the answers and make their decision. And then they also have to submit a defense. So we kind of went through that. That's really the most important part is being able to explain your answer because within this stack, there's probably several choices that each group could have a right answer or kind of right answer, unlike in our beta testing, some of the defenses we got were I won't name any names, point out any people. Just like, I mean, what? No, just say it. It was an excellent defense. I don't know. But the defense has to be limited to a minute, so they have to really be concise and to the point, and then they'll judge the teacher will judge based off of that, and that the black card goes to the winning group. And then if time's not up and no players reach, the goal is to reach 5 points. So if you get to the 5 points where each black card, so once you have 5 black cards, then you've won. And if not, then they want to start another round, right? So if you kind of we've gone through all the cards, we just start another round until you hit that 5 points or time. Because obviously in a classroom setting, that can get tricky with time running out on you. So, but it went pretty well when we did the beta testing. It kind of fit really well into the time frame, and I don't know, it went really smooth. You're thinking, what happened? I think we had one round where somebody had the worst hand possible, and it wasn't. And they were really trying to stretch to make the answer work. But that's where the writing cards, I guess, would really come
Does
in
everyone
handy.
get a write-in card? Like, is it like an automatic, like, or is it like a draw four on Uno, or change color? You know what I mean? Like a lucky card.
We had started with one per team per game.
Yeah.
You know, that was kind of what we laid out. So that
I remember.
you have to try to use some strategy, try to use the cards you're dealt,
Mhm.
but you've got one, you know, for
Yeah.
the entire
Just in
game.
case.
and,
Saying hang on
you
to
know,
it when you have
add
that
some of that
really
ambiguity
Yeah.
you know, to it
That's
also.
part of the
Oh, so
ambiguity
you-
of it, once
so-
you wanna use it.
So once you use it, that's it.
That was what
Mm-hmm.
that's what we put in the rules. You know, I think as we were going through this, we realized that there is leeway for the teachers, you know, to
Oh, yeah.
kind of blend it a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
obviously you can play to 3 instead of 5 if you're finding that 5 is too long for your classroom. You can, you know, you can force different people to be the speaker from the team, so that way it's not always the one kid, you know, being the speaker. Or you can tell they're the ones that's always giving the answer. You can say, oh no, you know, Johnny's got to give the answer, you know, this time around, or something like that. So we didn't put it in the rules, but you know, it's the
Yeah.
type of things that you know the teachers in the class will be. You know, they know their classrooms. They're going to know. You know, I think we tried to keep the rules kind of succinct
Yeah.
enough that it'll drive the game, but not so limiting that you know there's not room for flexibility. there.
Did you know about the white card like at the beginning? I'm just curious because I've played Cards of Humanity and there's no like option to like right. So like were you like, oh yeah, this is gonna be an issue? Did you know it or did you have to like did it
I think-
evolve?
I thought
I
there
think-
was a writing.
Yeah, I think, well, one thing that we talked about was like, what if you get all like junk cards and you can't play anything and you keep having junk cards? Like, that's not really your fault. It's not really fair. So we thought if you could, I think in Cards Against Humanity, normally you can trade your card, like you can switch, give cards back and get new
okay.
cards. So we thought
Instead
the
of doing
filling,
that, you got
yeah, would be less confusing, more straightforward.
And
Did
it's
you
a,
ever, oh, I'm sorry,
No, go
did you ever think of doing anything like, these random draw cards where you could rotate it to the right, rotate one card to the right, to kind of like upset the apple card a little bit?
No, we
Yeah,
didn't
not-
really
not that
talk
one
about
specifically.
that.
It's like the
Crappy
Uno kind of
cards
thing
of
with
the
the draw
next
fours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, no, that would have
I
made
mean,
it
I think in
interesting.
part we kind of saw a model that worked, and instead of trying to, you know, work, you know, it
You
said
can
let's,
get too tricky.
yeah, let's, you know, it's about, you know, defending your answer is really what, you know, kind of the
Right.
core of it came to, and we said, you know, it's not
Claim
try
evidence
to
reasoning.
make it, yeah, too
Yeah.
complex
Yeah.
in the
That's
game.
awesome.
Let's make it about, you know, defending that answer and,
Yeah.
really, you know, taking that skill
And
forward.
we did talk a lot about how, like, what you said, like, individual teachers are going to take this and you can modify it for your own classroom, you know, because we talked so many times, well, should we change this? Should we add that? Should we make, you know what, like, ultimately, as a teacher, you know, you're going to take something like this and you're going to use it in your classroom how you want to, right? So we can set the rules as we want, but you're going to change them.
I would just like to say, like, 'cause Brian was telling me about it on our walk back, and I thought it was like absolutely phenomenal. Like, as a science teacher, like struggling with the NGSS curriculum and the reasoning, like kids just cannot. They
cannot
just don't
explain
know the why.
themselves.
They never know why. Like, well, why is that the right?
Because I read it in a book.
I remember.
No.
You said it, Miss. You said it.
Yeah.
Most of these are going to be the right answer. You know, there can be some wrong answers, but most of them are going to be the right answer.
Which
You
will
know.
increase
You
your
can defend
reasoning
it.
Yeah, I mean,
component.
You know, so you can
So
have.
if you can argue
yeah, I mean,
it, and
everybody-
that's so right in there. Well,
Yes.
great
Everybody
idea.
knows that the polar bear is impacted by
Yeah.
rising temperatures. But if you can't explain that well, or if you can't, or if somebody else picks something obscure and you first look at it and say, what? You know, how are
Yeah.
bees
Right,
impacted
I was
by
just gonna say
rising
bees.
waters? But if someone comes through with this solid science-based answer and you say, yeah, that's a better answer than
Right, you win.
your polar bear answer. I mean, they're both right.
Yeah, I
But-
thought it was great.
From some of the horrible
Oh, here we
people
go. There we
who love to play cards
There you
against
go.
humanity.
We did that on purpose, right?
I didn't do anything.
Okay,
I think it's her hair. Is
Yeah.
that a touch screen?
We must build our defense of the planet in these horrible times. It's cards to save humanity. Playing cards to save humanity is easy. Almost everything you need is in the box. Black question cards, white answer cards, the environmental protector piece. You just need to provide a timer or stopwatch. The teacher is always the environmental protector, responsible for running the game and judging the answers. To separate into teams, organize the cards, each team starts with 8 answer cards. The round starts by the teacher reading a black question card aloud to the group. Teams then have up to 1 minute to choose the best answer from their white cards and prepare the defense of that answer. Writing cards are available if you want to build your own answer, but use them carefully. Each team only gets 1 per game. When you're ready, submit your answer to the environmental protector. The environmental protector will read each team's answer to the group, and the team has up to 1 minute to defend that answer. The teacher will review the answers for scientific accuracy and, most importantly, strength of defense and choose a winner, providing the black card for that round to the winning team. Draw back up to 8 cards, and you're ready to start another round. The first team to collect 5 black cards wins Cards to Save Humanity.
I almost didn't put the cheer in there.
Cards to Save Humanity, a game of critical thinking and powerful defense to help save the world.
That's awesome. That's ready to be marketed right there.
Ready to get a license infringement
That's
slapped
right.
on me right there.
So yeah.
So overall, is the reflection piece. I think as a group, we worked well together. We all had our individual parts. Brian originally came up with the idea to use the Cards Against Humanity style game, and we all kind of just went along with that. And it was easy to kind of settle on climate change as a theme because the 3 of us at least did the climate change ebook last semester in Dr. Red's class, and then obviously Kathleen's a science teacher, so we all kind of had
No problem.
a little bit of climate change background as far as the content goes. Overall, the challenges, I think the biggest thing was fitting the Cards Against Humanity, Cards Against Humanity style game into the classroom. So putting an emphasis on the explanation as opposed to the actual answer that you're giving, because it could literally be anything and they all fit. So putting more focus on the explanation piece is definitely the biggest challenge, I think, was putting it into a classroom setting. And then it ended up working out pretty well. I didn't really see anything that didn't go wrong. I don't think anything.
We collaborated pretty well. We were meeting weekly over Zoom
Yeah.
for a few weeks there. We were emailing and texting and collaborating on some documents, and generally it worked pretty well for us. No real bumps along the way.
And then Brian 3 printed that
I
awesome.
was just about to ask, is that 3D printed?
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Uh-huh.
My kids wanted to see it.
I
And
was
Oh,
gonna
that's
ask.
cool.
So
Cool.
that
They
wasn't
get
something
that.
you had, you actually
no, I
made
went.
that.
Yeah.
Get out.
What's it made out of?
Plastic, right?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I almost want to just have a 3D printer just to play around.
You start for library has 3 of them, I think.
Yeah.
Because they're
Glastonbury.
Well, we have a couple in our school. In fact, so we got
Raymond?
all of our students have devices
Big one,
this year,
Main one, yeah.
and they have styluses. They're these sort of tablet convertible things, and they've got styluses. And they discovered soon after they got them that kids were breaking the tips of the styluses because they just kind of clip onto the side, and then the kids were shoving them in their backpacks, and the tips were getting broken off. So one of the teachers designed a little pen cap for the styluses and started just 3D printing a ton of them up. And
Huh.
so they gave each of the students this little cap for their things, but they were all made in-house. They ran the design. And,
See a problem, solve it.
so questions from the group?
I love it,
We
yeah.
had a few ongoing.
Yeah, we asked them along the way.
I could totally see the kids getting really into it once you implement it in the classroom.
I agree.
I had a lot of fun playing it.
I think it's most
Not very
appropriate for
knowledgeable about
older
the subject
grades.
area. So
Plus,
Yeah.
you could do it for any content too. Same with the other game we
Yeah.
talked about before.
Yeah.
You could put any. If you just create the cards, you do it for any content area too.
I like the play on words like the Cards to Save Humanity.
Right.
That was Kayla.
I was pretty proud of that. Just came out of nowhere. Came out of nowhere. Like,
I didn't sleep for like 3
Right?
days.
Genius.
Yeah. I was trying to come up with something.
Like, I don't know
I'm punting
where it
all over the
came
place, and then she goes, "How about Cards of Safety Man?" I'm going, "Yes."
Duh,
It's always the obvious things, right? And
Yeah.
you're like, you're looking past
You're trying to
it,
be
like,
so
you're-
clever.
Yeah.
and-
And I'm usually not clever
Right.
like that.
And
So
yeah,
coming up with
that's
things
when
like
like
that.
your 6-year-old daughter comes out
That's
and like,
awesome.
spits out what it should be, and you're like, yeah, of course that's what it should be.
I think it's great that all the weight is on the defending
Yeah.
answer. I think
Yeah. I mean, that is in the original Cards Against Humanity. They do I mean, of course, the goal there is kind of silliness and crazy answers and playing to the person who's picking the answer and trying to read them. But they do encourage table talk and like for you to say, well, that's a horrible thing. You really should be doing that, but kind of expanding, latching onto that and expanding that into the. I mean, kind of the same thing with the first game of just adding that piece in of if you're gonna not accept their answer, having to come up with the right answer is because it keeps the emphasis on the content
Yeah.
as
Right.
opposed to on
Getting silly.
just exactly.
Well, and a big part of the newer standards, right, is so much on
Yeah.
explain your reasoning. Like you
Arguing
better,
from evidence.
yes,
blah, blah, blah,
like you
blah.
have
Oh
to
my
be able,
God,
and
just
they
can't do
are
it.
so terrible at
Yeah,
it. So the more
it's
practice
like-
they can
It's
get,
the
better.
critical thinking. It's so
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
Science is like going deeper.
You could even
Because it's not just about memorizing and spitting something back out. You know,
Right, I
that-
mean,
You
you
have
could
you
even
have to remember it, and you have to apply
yeah, you
it.
have to make
in
the
reason,
connection.
like,
Yes.
I mean, you could almost do a version of it that was more like an open book. The gameplay would slow down, but it could also be a reading for understanding kind of a thing where they
You have
could
resources, like let them
you
have
had resources and
Mm.
like if they would have to find 2 sources of evidence that support their answer or something like that. If you wanted to tie it into research skills even.
Yeah, you could.
or things
Cite your source.
We did talk about like making the defense worth more points. Like you could get extra points for the defense and like 2 points for a good defense and 1 point for a good answer, but then we just decided to keep it simple.
We kept trying to not overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
And that's what we.
What if
that's
there's
why.
two-
That's why we
Yeah,
went
what
with
if there's
ours
2 good
too.
answers? And we just said
Get
the
counted.
teacher has to
Yeah.
choose.
Yes.
Someone's going to be unhappy some of the times, but
It is what it is.
yeah. I mean,
And we actually
Yeah.
had that in the beta testing where I was like, I don't know how to, because I was the EP
But-
and I'm like, I don't know how to
but
choose.
even
Bold
there,
answers, bold
as
answers.
long as the
Yeah.
students don't get too hung up on it, even there, if you've got students trying to redefend, saying, "Well, wait a minute, no, ours is really better," because that's just forcing them to keep going deeper.
And again, that's
with
where
their
the teacher
defense.
has that leeway to say, if they want to hear a second round of defense, and say, I want to hear you guys, take those both a little further before I choose the winner.
You get another minute.
You guys are out, but you two go at it again or something like that, or
There's flexibility.
the game allows for that flexibility. I think.
Great job, guys. Very good.
All right, we are exactly at 6:00. Why don't we just take a quick,
No,
obviously,
because
we
of the
don't
way I
have to
handed
go
it
all
off
night,
it
we
nice
won't,
and then the
but
pen
take
threw
like
it
a
off,
quick
so
10
now
minutes just to get up and stretch our legs.
Sorry.
Plus,
It
we
still
are
is
still
all right.
waiting.
It shows, it peeks out here anyway.
He is. Okay, so we have Tommy
It's
and then
supposed to fit nice and centered, but.
Right,
off the top of my head.
Jimmy.
Oh, right. Okay.
I'm gonna text him right now.
Okay.
You can tell we didn't have.
But yeah, so why don't we take 10? That'll give Tommy a chance to at least get in the door, and then hopefully be followed up. Do you guys want this back next week?
I will not be able to use it in my preschool classroom.
No.
So